What's good, guys? Prince Sports coming at you with another one, bringing the filthy. Now, let's say it's 1984, and Michael Jordan don't exist. So, his replacement is none other than LeBron James. LeBron James is drafted to the Chicago Bulls. How many championships will he win? How successful is LeBron James being drafted to the Chicago Bulls? So, let's put this into notion. 1984, LeBron would have been getting drafted into the 80s, okay? So he would have came into the game with being downgraded, okay? Now, what I mean by downgraded, the stuff that you see LeBron doing now, he would not have been doing in the 80s. So this is why I find funny for some of you guys that sit there and say, oh, he'll be this, he'll be that. Not necessarily, especially on the offensive end, because in the 80s and 90s, the offensive game of basketball had a lot of limitations in terms of you scoring, because you had to really have skill set to get past your defender. Despite all the physical contact, you really needed a game, an offensive game, a scorer's mentality. And LeBron James, as you guys say, he's a pass-first player, even though that's a lie. He's not a pass-first player. You can't be a pass-first player when you're about to be on an all-time scorers list due to longevity and having good health. Plenty of guys could have did that. Michael could have did it if he didn't retire. Kobe could have did that if he didn't get injured. Nevertheless, he's about to get that, and that's okay. But that still doesn't make him a quote-unquote great scorer. He don't have a go-to move. And all of these moves that he do, charging towards the basket, that would have been a foul back in the day. Crab dribble, that would have been a travel back in the day. Euro step, illegal. Step back, illegal. So a lot of his moves, okay, that you see him do in this generation, because this generation has offensive freedom like no other generation ever had, because the league want perimeter players to score. LeBron wouldn't have that in the 80s. Think of Karl Malone mixed with Larry Johnson. That's who LeBron would be. And he would have came into the game averaging about 22 points a game, somewhere between that. He would have to develop a back-to-basket game, something he's never been good at. He would have to have been a good free throw shooter, because he probably get hacked a couple times, something he's not really good at as well. So these are facts. So how would he fare? He would be a good player. And will he win Rookie of the Year? I don't think so. I think it would have went to Hakeem Olajuwon. But LeBron James would have had a good season. Nevertheless, good seasons. But they were missing the postseason a lot. More times than they did if Michael was there, okay? So just like the beginning of his career in the 2000s, he missed the postseasons for a couple of seasons. So same thing would happen in the 80s. So let's move on to the 90s. But before we do that, if you're going to sit there and say, oh, no, he'll do this, who's going to stop him? Let Kenny Smith explain this.
Because there's no hand checking, when he comes and I come here and I don't like it, now I can come back, I can set you up, I can throw it between my legs, then I can go into my move. So now I don't like it. I get to an area of the floor, all I have to have is a pullback dribble to get to a spot to shoot the ball. In the era that we kind of grew up in, when you make your move and the hand is there and you try to reset, the hand is still on you, so you're not allowed to look.
You can steer him wherever you want.
So that rule, the rules of the game itself, would dictate that LeBron James wouldn't have his way as much, okay? He would have to play a big man style of basketball, something that he's not too good at, all right? He would have to have somebody get him open off fast breaks to get dunks and points, a la Stockton, Karl Malone. That's who LeBron would have to be. He would have to be more like Karl Malone in the 80s and 90s. And that wouldn't be a go-to guy for scoring, okay? Especially with his shooting woes, because he would have came into the game with shooting bricks, like he was called. Remember when he first came into the league? Shooting was a problem. They used to call him League Brick. So, we go into the 90s, right? After years of suffering, getting called out by the media, so to speak, LeBron James would have to deal with the Pistons, the Celtics, continually taking losses from these teams. But in 1987, he would have had Scottie Pippen to go through these growing pains. Now, Scottie Pippen and LeBron James is a recipe for disaster because they both really played the same game. Some people used to call LeBron James, LeBron Scottie Pippen James, which I don't agree with. But their games are very similar because they point forwards, right? So it's lack of room for development when both of these guys have very similar flaws, especially when it comes to closing. So they would have got their butts kicked a lot. Now, 1991 comes along. Let's say they kept losing to Detroit Pistons because they would have. Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, all those guys would have beaten LeBron James and Scottie Pippen countless times. Okay? LeBron would have been having a disappearing act, same way he did early in his career. Played good in the regular season, and then you say, what happened to him in the postseason? He disappeared. He choked. It would have been something similar to that, but I think even worse. So, let's just say, for argument's sake, they find a way to finally get past the Detroit Pistons, because that would have been the team standing in their way a lot. They get past the Detroit, they still end up not making the finals, if you ask me, because they would have to go do Cleveland, and Cleveland knows how to close games. And if you watch that series, the Bulls need a closer. They need a guy that could score, that could close games out, that plays both ends of the floor, that could shut down players. LeBron James has never been a good one-on-one defender. He's a good help defender. So there's a good chance that they don't get past the Cleveland Cavaliers, but for argument's sake, let's say they get past the Cleveland Cavaliers. They go up against Magic Johnson in the NBA Finals. They still lose that too because the lack of closing. Bad free throw shooting. Bad decisions come closing time. Just imagine Scottie Pippen and LeBron James passing the ball to each other like hot potato, scared to take the final shot. Or not even taking it, passing it to a role player. They will lose that series in about 6 games. So they go on to 1992. Now, if they somehow made it to go to the finals in 92, which I think they don't even go to the finals in 92, I think LeBron loses to the Knicks in 1992 because of the physicality. And LeBron James is not a scorer yet. He don't have an offensive game like a Kobe or a Jordan that he could go have a go-to move that he could punish his opponents with. So if you could beat Karl Malone in that era countless times, you'd be able to beat LeBron James. But for argument's sake, let's just say they find a way, injuries take place. They go to the NBA Finals. They still lose to Clyde Drexler and the Portland Trailblazers because, once again, that team was a bunch of Rough Riders. And without somebody to put their foot on their neck to close games out, LeBron loses again. 1993, self-explanatory, the Phoenix Suns would have beaten the Chicago Bulls, even if the Bulls made it to the NBA Finals. And I'm not sure if Scottie Pippen would have been the great player that or great role player turned all-star if he played with LeBron James. I'm not sure he would have made that lift because Scottie Pippen needed somebody to be strong and tough on him, mentally tough. And LeBron James don't uplift his teammates like that. He jokes and dances and has a good time with his teammates. So I find that funny that you think that LeBron would have won multiple championships when he can't win multiple championships in an era where it's more easier to score. And he's played on multiple teams with all-stars and still failed to come up and win more championships. All right? He came up short more times. Underachieving, very similar to Wilt Chamberlain. So if he do that in his own era, common sense pretty much would tell you he kind of would do that in the rest of these eras. And here's the big thing that swings the bat to my way. There's no super teams for LeBron James. There is no top 5 players he could go out and recruit in AD. He don't have Dwayne Wade to teach him how to close games and to be a winner and to win championships. He's in trouble. How he's going to get over that hurdle to becoming a champion, okay? Something will have to get done. But I believe in all-time greats. So there's no way that I think LeBron James will come out ringless. But I will tell you this much. We moved to 1994. Hakeem Olajuwon would have been like what's this guy named? Tim Duncan to LeBron James. So even if LeBron James manages to steal one championship from Hakeem Olajuwon, I would say he would ultimately lose more championships to Hakeem Olajuwon, or not even get to the finals at all. So let's just say, for argument's sake, they split. Okay, so that makes them 1-1. You know, even though in 1994 the Bulls won 55 games, I still don't think they had enough in their superstar in LeBron James to get past Hakeem Olajuwon. He'd have been too dominant for them. So I still say they lose in 94, right? And 95 would be the year that they've been more vulnerable to get beat, Hakeem Olajuwon. But keep in mind, if history plays its course, Horace Grant is not on the team anymore, right? So the Bulls go do a little revamp. And why they go do that revamp, they lose to the Orlando Magic, okay? The same thing that happened as history takes place, what happened with LeBron James. So I think they don't even get to the finals really in 94 or 95. And if they do, they lose in 94, but don't make it in 95. So here comes 1996. LeBron James is getting criticized. He's getting thrown under the bus. He's calling Lee flop, Lee brick. He's being called the ultimate choker. All of these things, disappearing from random things that you just don't know why, you know, and having very little impact on the series. But 1996, they get Dennis Rodman. Tony Kukoc develops into a good role player. And I think that's the year LeBron James, I had enough. He wins the MVP that year. And that's the season, that's the year LeBron James wins his first championship, 1996. 1997, they repeat. 1998, since LeBron James has a history of underachieving, they split it with the Utah Jazz. So he wins 2 out of 3 with the Utah Jazz. He two-peats, all right? But loses 1 with the Utah Jazz. Now comes 1999. Shortened season. Even if they make the finals, I still say they lose to Tim Duncan and the Spurs because it's Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan always had a way to have more impact on the series, especially when it's going up against LeBron James. So it'd be like similar to the years of past when LeBron is losing to Tim Duncan. So I would say LeBron lose that. 2000, here comes Kobe and those boys. No way LeBron James is beating Kobe Bryant and Shaq. He loses. I don't care if he gets to the finals. He still loses to those guys, period. So he's stuck at 2 championships. About time the year 2000s come, and we're moving on to a new era. And granted, he don't have a super team to rely on. He don't have a Ray Allen to bail him out, to quote-unquote save his legacy. He don't have none of these future Hall of Famers, all-stars, superstars to help him. He has to do a lot of the heavy lifting on his own. And I say he wins 2 championships, max. Prince Sports out. Peace.